Hey guys, welcome to the Actualize Series. I'm your host, Jordan Tabano. This is a show where we tell stories of entrepreneurs, creatives, and very inspiring people that have brought their grandest visions and genius ideas to life. If you're new to my channel, ensure that you subscribe. And if you've been watching a few of these videos and you're enjoying them, ensure you subscribe because we've got heaps more content coming out over the next few weeks with some very inspiring people who have a huge amount of wisdom and a really, really cool story to tell. Today, episode 2, I have another inspiring guest. She is an intuitive business coach, an alchemist. Her clients around the world have dubbed her as their real life spirit guide. She's the author of the book Make Money Want You, the host of the podcast Money, Sex, Business, and Awakening, as well as the creator of the Modern Woman Academy, a business dedicated to helping trailblazing women prosper and thrive in doing what they love. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my guest onto the Actualize show, Alex Harvey. Get your pens and pads out because this is a ripper. Um, because it is like I found with this work, you can see your visions and be in like hope mode and be like, oh, this is nice. This makes me feel
Yeah.
good. And you could get attached to make like kind of there might be components of it that are true for you to go for, but you can start your ego can get in there and kind of change some details, and all of a sudden it's gone from this vision that's big and it's true for you to create to this like shiny object that you get lost in, and 6 months down the track you look back, you go, oh, that wasn't even true for me to follow. That wasn't my intuition.
Yeah, totally. I actually call it the ego fantasy. It's when, you
Mm,
identify your vision, what you'd really love, what's true to your heart, and then your ego goes into total fantasy about it. And it's like
yeah, fucking thing.
shine, yeah, it's gonna be like this, and this is what I'm gonna get from it. I'm gonna get, my attention, significance, security,
Yeah.
whatever. And it starts to, yeah, become this fantasy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you tell do you find that your clients get lost in that quite a bit?
Yeah, I find it can happen, especially earlier on, you know, and then people meet their resistance. So we're more often working with resistance than being in fantasy.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, the fantasy definitely happens. And I would say even more so if someone is newer to whatever the thing is that they're wanting to pursue, it just seems to lend itself to a bit more going into fantasy. Oh,
Yeah.
by the end of the year, I'm gonna like 100 levels higher than where they
Yeah.
are right
Yeah.
now. Okay, yeah. But let's get grounded here.
What so it's interesting because some lots of people in self-help are like, you got to be excited. It's a good thing when you're excited, it helps. Um, why why do you think the fantasy so first off, but what I'm curious to hear your perspective on, why do we run to the fantasy when we know that feeling, we know it's not, you know, helpful, but why do you think we go to it instead of going for the thing that's come up first? That's like, yeah, okay, this vision has this emotion, but over here, I've got this other thing that makes me feel like, why do you think we find it so easy to go that way?
Well, I don't know, it's not helpful. Like you were just starting to say, there's everyone's saying like, yeah, be really excited, be in a high about it. And so it's not something that I see anyone warning anyone about, anyone talking about and saying, hey, like there's a discernment here of if you're going into kind of fantasy and this is going to fulfill all of like my sense of incompleteness, and then everything in my life is going to be okay, and everything will be set from there. I feel like that's a really telltale thing. Oh, if I just get there, this happens, everything will be set, never going to have to worry about anything again, everything's going to be okay. And no one's kind of talking about it, or bringing in that distinction of like, are you going into fantasy? Are you getting literally high off it, because of what you think it's going to give you, rather than, that more, I don't know if this is the right word, but I would even use the word like humble, like that more humble, just connection to your true vision, which can still be really big, but it's it's got a different energy to it when you're in that true connection to your heart and what your heart wants, versus your ego like latching on and going, okay, amazing, this is how I'm going to get everything I ever wanted, and resolve everything that I think is broken and incomplete about me.
Yeah. And it's I mean, I found when I started with alchemy and super conscious, when I first heard that, it's like the high stuff is not, your truth. I didn't like that. It's like, but I like this. This feels good, and it's just so easy to get lost in that, because even one of my mentors told me, you actually train yourselves to look for that high and that release, and once you've trained your body to follow that, I mean, it's really hard to shift. So I'm curious, like, what do you get your clients to do when they're in that, or to even like acknowledge that they're in that? What practices do you give them?
Yeah, well, um, I would say that, it doesn't come up that often in sessions, but when it does, is that I just get people to focus on their next obvious action step,
Mm, mm,
and just like bring it, because also what tends to happen is when people are in that kind of high and fantasy, is that they're not really in taking action yet. They're
mm,
in like the idea of what it's going to be like. And if they shift their focus into, just take the next obvious action, that I find that to be very grounding. And then, that's what's going to bring up their resistance. And then we can work through the resistance. And then that generally brings them back to a place of more balance. Because, sort of like you were saying, when you sort of keep going after that high, there's always a crash.
yeah.
There's always the crash. And so bringing yourself back to your heart and your next action step, and the vulnerability of, whether this is ever going to result or not, sort of brings you back to center, brings you back to your heart.
I love what you said there. It's when you're in that high, you're not in the action. You're not actually taking any action towards the thing. I think that's such a great indicator. I've never actually heard it put that way, but yeah, it's like when you get that first idea for the business or the book, or I do music, or whatever your thing is. You're kind of sitting there at the cafe or on the beach going, "Oh, this is amazing," but nothing's actually happened.
Yeah, or you're planning,
Yeah,
you're doing a timeline, you're like
yeah.
writing stuff, but you're not actually in the real like rubber hits the road action.
So dive deep into resistance, because there's a lot out there on resistance. There's the shadow stuff. There's limiting beliefs, changing your beliefs. Give me like when you talk about resistance to your clients, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so resistance is what comes up for you that opposes what you'd really love, the thing you really want, the vision you want to have, you living your most fully expressed self, you living at your highest potential. Resistance is like what prevents you from that, what stops you from that, what makes you procrastinate, withdraw, or hide, shy away, do something else, do the easy, do something that's easier. And so, it's always going to be there. Everyone has resistance. Like it is this force that's always going to be there, because your ego always opposes, doesn't think it's safe to, go outside of your comfort zone, go outside of what you've experienced before, go outside of what it believes is the limits or the safety in the world. And so we've got to be prepared for it, because it's always going to come up, and it's not personal, it doesn't mean anything. It's just that force within us, you can say from your ego, that opposes and resists what is for your highest good and what you truly and most deeply want. I think sometimes, or I see sometimes, I encounter this mentality that, like, if it's true for you and if it's in your heart, nothing will oppose it.
Yeah.
And it's not quite accurate, because your ego will oppose it. And a lot of times people think, oh, that means there's something wrong, it's just not right, that classic, it doesn't feel right anymore. And it's like, no, that's just your resistance. And I think when we can know that, it makes a really big difference.
Yeah, it's so true. I write a lot of music, so whenever the song's very easy, from the space of, like, I get that lusty feeling, and then it just kind of happens, and it's like, oh, this is great, and I'm thinking about everything that's going to happen after. I know immediately it's just, no, this is not it. And I often tell my other muso friends, when I'm writing something really serious, I don't want to write it. I avoid it. It'll come up, it continue to come up. That concept, that's the thing. It's too hard, too hard, too hard. Um, and my friends will say, "Well, why do you stick at it?" It's like, because that's the thing. This is normal. This is normal. There's some tension here for me to work with, and some people, especially in the music world, they don't want to hear that. It's like, it's got to flow. It's got to be nice. But it's like, no, you got to be in that thing where it might take 6 months to write, or even 2 years, but that's okay. It's not, doesn't mean that you can't have it.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that it's not really want to write, or something that's, true to bring through in your creativity. Yeah, just because you're wrestling with it.
Yeah, yeah. You obviously work with a lot of business owners on this. Did you have an experience of resistance where you were like, "Oh, wow, this is something
Oh my God.
that's," yeah.
Yeah, well, uh resistance has been so huge for me. I'm someone that has just encountered so much resistance. And even once I was doing work on myself and having self-awareness of my resistance, I even found I even reached a point where I was myself heading 100 miles an hour into the brick wall, but I can't stop it. I would feel paralyzed, and I would feel like, okay, I know I need to, create some things around this to keep my project moving, but it's like my mind would go totally blank and I couldn't think of anything. So even if I was like, okay, I can see that I'm stopping myself here and I'm in my resistance, but I feel powerless to actually like remember or conceive of like what I need to do next to keep moving forward. So it's been, yeah, a really big part of my process. And my first few years in business and doing coaching, I had a coaching business before my current coaching business that I quit at some point, just because I had such painful resistance around it. But it was one of those things for me, coaching, where, it just kind of kept knocking, like it just kept coming back. And I was like, okay, I do really want to do this. Like, this is
Yeah.
just, no matter what, like I want this to be a part of me. I want to do it. And
Yeah.
yeah, overcoming resistance has been, yeah, one of my just biggest challenges. And it's something I continue to face and work with. And, I'll have times where everything's feeling easy and comfortable. And then like bang, I'll be taking myself to the next level, doing something else, and all the same shit will come back. So yes.
Mm. What was that first coaching business that you were running?
Yeah, so I started off just like very, very initially with life coaching, and then very quickly it became centered around sexuality and supporting women with their pleasure and sexual expression.
Yeah, wow, wow. So take me back there, because that's it's not it's different to what you do now, but it's still in that realm of you're working with energy. It's still structure there. I could imagine I've worked with a sexuality coach before. It very much is still structural in that work. I'm curious, so what led you into that work? How did you get into that space?
Okay, whenever people start asking me these questions, I'm like, okay, how do I condense this into something that's not going to take a really long time? But the short story is that it was something since I was about 18, I think, 18, 19, that I was experiencing kind of big blocks around
Mm,
being able to access or feel any pleasure or turn on in my body.
wow.
And it was something that at the time I felt so broken about it. I
Yeah.
felt, so ashamed as well. And I didn't know where or how to get any answers around it. And I actually just assumed that I was broken, like I didn't
Mm,
function like everybody else. And I had a housemate at the time. She was my best friend from childhood that I, told about what I was experiencing. And she really encouraged me to go see my doctor. I saw my doctor and I spoke to her about it. And it was like this thing that, what I felt like, and then what I felt was reflected to me by my doctor was like this thing that no one even really knows about. Like, how can you be, like it's
mm,
something so unique to you that's wrong, or me that's wrong with me, and not like a really fucking normal thing.
mm.
And so yeah, so it sort of sent me on a journey of, yeah, of kind of continuing to try to look for answers. Now, if you Google this kind of thing, there's so much online. Like
Mm,
there's so much,
mm,
but there was not at this time. There was nothing. And so I sort of, yeah, would try to look and then kind of find nothing. And then through my healing journey, eventually through this sort of sequence of events, I became aware of Tantra and this concept that um, that trauma is stored in the body, and like then that affects like what you feel and experience, and then that's something that you can change and work on. And once I heard that someone share this, I was like, oh my God, that's it. That makes so much sense to me. Like,
yeah.
duh. Obviously, how has it taken me? I think it was literally like 6 years. How has it taken me
Whoa.
6 years to find someone that said that?
Yeah.
And so then I really dove into sexuality work for my own, for my own journey. And through what I learned through that, I was like, what the actual fuck? Like, how is this information not out there, and
Yeah.
I had a not super extreme but maybe more extreme version of shutdown in my body, but there's so many women, that don't orgasm, don't think they can orgasm, only orgasm with their partner, only
Mm,
orgasm on their own, experience some kind of limitation in their sexuality and think
mm.
that's just the way it is. And what I learned through my journey, I was just like, just people need to know about this. Like, this is
Yeah,
so important.
yeah.
So
Physical.
yeah,
So
that's yeah.
so physical resistance. It sounds like, but it very obviously very unconscious.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's completely connected to mental emotion. It's just like that's one thing, really, like one system that's functioning all together. So, it's like you can coming at it on the mental level and the physical level, and the emotional level, like it all part of it, to expand and shift and create more of whatever experience it is that you want, more
Yeah,
openness, sensation, pleasure, or orgasmicness, being able to be in it, not in your head, all
yeah.
that kind of thing.
And that's such a key principle for just getting by resistance full stop, just not being up here. Because when you're up
Yeah.
here and you're going, okay, what's this thing? What's this belief? Or what's this trauma? Where is it? You just make it worse. So
Yeah.
I personally found when I worked with my sexuality coach, that was the biggest thing I took away. It's like when I'm connected to my energy, I'm unstoppable. Like I'm not really thinking much. Things are flowing in all areas. But when I'm disconnected, my health sucks. I'm eating like shit. I'm drinking. It's the dominoes. You can see them from a mile away. So it's a very powerful thing.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's so true, as you say, in just being in your life and powerful in your life and connected to your creativity and connected to your life forces, not being in your head, like not,
Mm.
you know, this constant thinking, relentless thinking, trying to work things out. It's like you're not really thinking too much, but you're direct, and you're in it. It's like this experience, I feel like, of being in it, and being in your body, being connected to your heart is all part of that.
So, I'm curious to hear because that it sounds like at that time you were, and I might be wrong in saying this, you were one of the first sexuality coaches or one of the someone out there offering this service where there's not tantra teachers and it's not like cool to be another coach. Like, was that the case? You're bringing like a new thing into the world?
Yeah, it was. So there was two people that were really big online teaching about it. And one of them is whose video I found, Layla Martin, that was just like in her complete early stages. And yes, I did, so I did some retreats, some in-person retreats where I guess I met some people working in the field through that. And then I studied sexological bodywork,
Okay.
which is like a somatic sexology.
Yeah.
And so I met people who were sort of, wanting to, yeah, take this work out into the world. So I met people like in that budding phase, early on. But yeah, it wasn't like outside of that, it wasn't a big thing. I did, like, people hadn't heard of it. I mean, you'd still meet a lot of people that maybe haven't heard of it, but it just wasn't what it is now at all.
Yeah. I'm curious how you found that in like marketing something like that. Because I'd imagine, because you think about coaches when it's known, it's like, oh yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
You don't have to explain it. But when it's not, it's like, what do you do?
Yeah, totally. I think I'm just like, I think like in certain sort of circles, I found it easy, and like people that were wanting to live outside the system and the mainstream, it was quite interesting to them. And so I found that okay. But and I did actually just fully go for it. which I'm pretty proud of myself because that is like a
Awesome.
little bit unlike me. I did initially fully go for it, but then I actually did have sort of a big whiplash on it
Okay.
and had a lot of shame come up. And I remember once I had this experience that I just so much shame, or I felt so much shame because of it. I felt just completely sick. I had put up, I was living in Byron Bay at the time, and I actually put up posters or, some flyers or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
like
yeah,
at
yeah,
some
yeah.
places. And my yoga teacher told me I think they were trying to be supportive, but I really would have preferred they didn't tell me this. They told me they were at a cafe and they saw my flyer, and then they heard other people overheard other people talking about it, just saying, I don't know, some horrible things about
Okay.
it,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
And I think they were trying to tell me like, oh, I think it's really brave that you did that. And I was kind of like, I just felt so sick. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God. Oh yeah, it was definitely a thing. I found because I was in such an alternative like networks and communities at the time. I'll tell you where it's actually been more challenging is when I then started a coaching business again around supporting people with money and business, and having that as the main focus of what I was doing. And and the sexuality work, on one hand, it is about feeling more pleasure and connecting with your pleasure. But on the other hand, what I found it to be just so powerful for is connecting with your inner sense of power, especially for women. I think it's the same for everyone, but especially for women, where we are kind of conditioned out of that power and the connection to our bodies, and the way that we can connect with our essence, which you could say greatness, sexuality practices. And so it was something that people that knew that I had that background, clients of mine that knew that I had that background, were really curious about. And I felt
Mm.
like would be really valuable to bring into the work that we were doing. And that's where I had a lot more difficulty, because I had all these beliefs like, oh, now mainstream people watch me and follow my account, and what are they going to think? And I just had, even though I could see it, it took me a really long time to overcome it. All this stuff around this will discredit my
Mm.
current coaching business. This will
Oh,
discredit
yes.
me
Yeah.
as an intellectual person. People aren't going to trust me anymore. People aren't going to see
Mm.
me as like an intellectual smart person anymore. If I talk about sexuality and I bring that into my work. So that's been sort of the bigger challenge of
The
being
bigger,
public with it.
so it's like you were full on alternative over here and it's all good.
Yeah.
Like this is,
Yeah.
and now, but now I'm,
Yeah.
business and money, and now I'm bringing this. That can't happen.
Yeah. Like if I'm talking about money, if I'm teaching people about money, and, and now start bringing in these like more alternative concepts that people might not have come across before. And obviously everyone's got all this shit around sexuality. I mean, people got enough shit around money, then bring in sexuality as well.
Yeah.
Uh, it brought up a lot for me. It brought up a lot. Yeah.
Did you find you were dealing with yourself more, your thoughts and your projections of what's going to happen? Or did that fear ever come true out there with your market? Like they're going, oh, I don't want to do these practices, or so was it mainly you to handle, or did you have to do anything with your new market?
Sorry, I think I just paused for a second. Can you repeat
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. So you had this thing of like people are going to think it's weird. Did it ever come true?
People thinking it's weird. I'm absolutely sure it did. Like
Yeah.
I'm so sure people unfollowed me and unsubscribed from my email list and stuff like that. I never have had a really negative confrontation where someone has come at me for it, I'm sure there's more people that have just sort of like slipped out the back door and been like, yeah, it's not really my vibe. But actually what I have found interestingly is that most people that I either was already working with, or, you know, if I would start working with people and be like, hey, I've got this program you can try and be a part of if you want to, they were either really curious about it or they just fucking loved it. Like I have actually had from people I actually work with such positive feedback, and positive feedback as well from what they've gotten from bringing that into the process. But yeah, no, people generally that are drawn to me, yeah, really love it and value it.
It's so powerful, isn't it? Because I'm really resonating with your story, because I had the same thing when I started writing music, sharing it. And I'm like, forget sales, Jordan. You're a rapper now and you make all this music and people are going to think you're freaking weird. 2 years down the track, I'm catching up with these old colleagues and they're going, oh, I've got your songs on my playlist. I listen to you every day. And I was like, really? Yeah, you're awesome. And I had no idea. And I took a bit of a break, kind of the same with you. Went full at it, then I had all this shit come up. Similar story. I won't get into it, but it was just like, oh wow, holy crap, my ego is making this worse than it actually is. It's actually not true. And sure, I'm banking on there were people that said, oh, this guy's fucking weird now, he's lost it. But yeah, it's often not the truth, is it? When you're triggered like that, when you're going, oh, this is what it's going to be like. It's actually not real.
Yeah, totally. It's not real. And also, like in my case, my, you know, people hadn't come across this before. It was my job to share the insight that I had around this, and create a way for them to explore it rather than think, oh, because this is not already in people's category, like of thinking and like, therefore I can't do it. So, there's that element to it as well. But yes, definitely our ego thinks it's worse, or it's not even real, because the fact is, I'll say for me, but I'm sure this has been the same for you and for everyone that encounters this kind of situation, is that like you also just got to let go of the people that don't resonate with it, because that's what enables you to connect with the people that do really resonate with it. And it's like you don't get to connect with the people that really resonate with the fullness of what you have to offer if you won't offer it for fear of losing the people that don't resonate.
Yes, 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 yes. It's very powerful.
And I
I yeah.
remember one of my second money workshop, I think that I did, I struggled. So for the same sort of reasons, I struggled in my marketing to really express the kind of spiritual component that I brought to money. And, so I had this workshop that was very practical and did have mindset stuff, but it just was like, well, very carefully positioned. So it was very palatable to what I perceived people
Yeah,
already believed.
yeah.
And so I had this guy there who wanted to like question me on everything, wanted to try to like mansplain me on things, and was not someone that was ideal like for really getting the value that I had to offer.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I realized was like, oh, by trying to be what I think I should be, I'm going to draw in people that don't fully resonate with me. And I'm not going to give the people that do fully resonate with me what they really need and what I can give them,
I love that. I've got so many questions around that. The first obvious thing that I want to dive into is, so this guy is doing this on this workshop. What did you do that helped you bring out more of you in your message later, like after that experience?
Yeah. What did I do afterwards? I just claimed the emotional and spiritual component so much more, and didn't you know, didn't try to sell it based on like a really dry, you know, really dry kind of perspective, and this is what it's going to be about. Because I realized no one, like, I'm not going to have amazing workshops doing that, you know, like there's going to be no greatness in this workshop, because these people are going to be low key dissatisfied. These people are not going to get what they could have got. And it's just going to be just not like, no one's going to think it was amazing. Not
Yeah.
that people have to think it's amazing, but you know, it just won't be that.
Yeah.
So I just leaned into being more honest about what I was really about, and what I was about helping people with, you know, and I found that difficult. And that's the thing that actually still continues to come up for me around like leaning into and really expressing things that are not scientifically validated in the mainstream.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
it's just a thing. It just always comes up for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm laughing because I have the same thing. It's like, are people going to get this? Are they really going to get it? And sometimes, you know, whenever my genius pops, it's like they don't need to get it, man. They need to feel it at times. They need to feel it, and it's like I seem to get it in music where I could be writing about the weirdest stuff, but it doesn't matter. But in business, it's like, I don't know. It needs to be very understandable. So I love how you said that. I so when you're in that, what do you come back to whenever you're putting a campaign together, like emotionally? Will you think about your clients? Will you think about your offer? Will you come back to you?
That's a good question. What do I do when I notice it? Yeah, it's coming back to the heart of the offer and what and who I want to serve with it. So
Mm.
the first thing that I do is I identify, oh, I'm not really, you know, like I'm trying to prove why this is valid to people, rather than rather than just authentically telling people about it. I'm going through this process of actually trying to prove this is
Yeah.
why this is actually valid, you know.
Yeah.
And go, okay, I'm just going to put that aside, and it's okay if people don't get it. This actually, now that I say this, this comes up a bit even with emailing my email list. And it's like, you know, it's like my ego believes that there's all these really judgmental, ultra cynical
Oh, yeah.
people on the other
Yeah. I
end.
have the same
And
thing.
it's
Yeah.
like, it's like, okay. And I have to just put them down and be like, okay, I'm going to let them go. If they think this is too weird and there's all these cynical people and they unsubscribe, they should go, because
Yeah.
they're never going to enjoy this email list. They're never going to enjoy any of my other offers. So it's a bit of a vulnerability process, I would say, of like, it's okay if people judge me for all the things I don't want them to think about me. Like I don't, you know, like I'm not grounded in reality. I'm not intellectual. I must be really dumb to believe in stuff like that, or whatever I
Mm.
think it is. Just like, okay, it's okay if people believe that about me, because I'm just going to speak to the heart of the person that's actually really craving this and really wants this. And it's so helpful that I share this.
Mm. I love that. And it's such, I love how you said it, you know, coming back to the offer, because it gets so personal, right? When you're in that, it's like, what am I good at? And how can I share it? It's like, no, it's not about me. Um,
And what are people going to think about me?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like this is a challenge for any entrepreneur or any creative that just wants to continue growing and expanding, because, you know, we're not going to stay the same for our whole journey when we're creating stuff. Um, so, you know, so after that second money workshop, I'm curious to hear what came after. So that finished, and then what came next with the coaching?
Yeah, so I did another 1 or 2 money workshops. And the interesting thing with my money workshops was my first money workshop, which was a half-day workshop, half kind of between a half and full day workshop. I had as much packed into that workshop and that workbook that would fill out a whole course, but I just didn't realize that at the time. And I started to notice through that process how people found very simple elements more profound because it was meeting them where they were at. They didn't
Mm,
need these other steps yet, and it didn't
mm,
make sense. It wasn't something they could integrate. So I made it every time I cut down the workbook and the workshop to less things. And I through the experience of observing people realized how the more simple things were more helpful and more impactful at that stage of their journey. So
mm.
yeah, I did another 1 or 2 of the workshops, and then I put together a course, and in that course I went full, like, this is what I want to do.
Here's one.
This is the mindset, emotional component, spiritual component, energy around money, and here are the practical elements as well.
Yeah, amazing. And it's like I feel like that's the same with anything. Like when you start, it's like you got to chuck it all in, and then eventually it's like no, 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 and it's always like that, right? You make a great video. This is the best. Out crickets. There you go. I'll just put this other thing up, and everyone loves it. You go, why do you like that? I spent 2 hours on that other thing and 5 minutes on this little thing, and you love that shit. It's just yeah, it just goes to show it's not personal.
It's not personal. And what I also have learned through the process is that it's about also resonate, like creating something that people can resonate with, that they can connect with, not the most like complicated, what's the most amount of information, like, you know, something that's more intellectual, more complex, because that's that's not what people connect with, and that's not what, and because they can't connect with it, it doesn't help them as much, like, and in the context we're kind of talking about. So I found, I used to sometimes, I would look at other people's content that would have so much engagement from the most, like what you're talking about, like the most simple, basic things. And I would be like, what the fuck? What I do has so much more depth. Like what I'm saying has so much more depth. Like, why is everyone like losing their shit over this person that said the most basic thing in one
Yeah.
sentence? And, and it's what I realized, it's like because people like that met people where they were at, so they could
Mm,
connect with it, so they can resonate with it, so then they can take whatever next steps they need to in their journey. But it's so much more about like connecting than proving you've got value.
mm. And I feel like what you teach with the first business, what you took from that, embracing your sexuality, I mean, surely that puts the connection piece with your clients and, obviously in your personal life too. It puts that on steroids because if you're not connected to yourself, I mean, how are you gonna connect to others?
Yeah, one of the huge things that I got from all of that work is even also just the embodiment,
Mhm.
being able to like be in my body, and, not saying that I'm like perfect at this, but, and recognize what being in my head is and what being in my body is. And like, if I'm just teaching from my head versus being in my body, and like being in my body is just, being connected, and it's being connected to my heart as well. So I can be sharing from that connected, yeah, like what you're saying, that connected place within myself,
Mm.
rather than, what. I mean, I still did this a lot at the start of my business, and I probably still do it now sometimes, is like cutting off at the head. It doesn't really, you can say great things, you can say helpful things, you can say valuable things, but it's usually not going to really like connect with people.
It's not going to connect
Because
with people.
you're not really there and present. You're not meeting what's going to be the helpful way to deliver it in the moment. You're in this preconceived, this is what I'm going to say and like how I'm going to share it. And, like you're not really here.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to take us back to when you finished up with the sexuality business, because there's something yeah, so it's you said you took a break after that. There was like this moment where you're like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I've met so many coaches and business owners that go through this. I went through this with my sales agency. I was like, done. And I was adamant, no more business. I'm going to make money as a musician. Didn't know how, but that was it. Did you have a similar experience where you were done with business, or was it just like a break? Talk to me about that period.
Yes, this is another one where I'll endeavor to give you the short version.
Yeah.
But essentially, before I got into coaching, I was an engineer. And so this I had this identity. And even before I was an engineer, I did really well at school. I was very good at a lot of sport. So I had this really like validated identity. I could tell people I was an engineer and people would be like, oh, well, you must be so smart, like no good shit together kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
And so when I left that to go and pursue my path and find out what I really wanted to be doing and follow that, I also sort of encountered and like kind of believed in this thinking that actually I think we were talking about at the start, that if I just follow my truth, it's all going to work out and it's all going to be easy. It's all just going to be like roses and wonderful, right? So I was believing in that, and I pretty soon got into entrepreneurship after that and coaching, and I thought it should all happen quickly and easily, like the success that I would create in my business. And that was my expectation. And so when that expectation wasn't met, I felt like there was firstly something so wrong with me, like this works for everyone else, but it's not working for me. There must be something wrong with me. I'm a massive failure. And also because I was, not having a new success identities to step into, I was having a total identity crisis
Oh,
of like, who am I without success, without this title, with nothing, like doing this thing that's like not even perceived as intellectual, my intellectual stuff coming up. And, and I just through that whole process, I just burnt out hardcore. And I lost connection to like myself, why I was doing it, and I spent through all of my savings. So I was then in a position of, I guess, essentially like desperation and like survival and fear. And so I was like, yeah, just nah, I just need to quit this
yeah,
and, refocus, recenter. I don't know what I'm going to do. So it wasn't like I'm never going to do business again. It was like, I don't know what I'm going to do,
yeah,
but I have to stop this and then figure out my next step.
yeah. So many bits. I'm just like, yeah, that was me. That was me. Been there. It's just, and I hear so many people go through the same thing. It's like they left one thing, go to the next thing, and there's this big blow up because they're not getting that hit. You as an
Validation.
engineer, my thing was sales. Another one of my friends, advertising, was just like when it doesn't happen. So okay, so there's that space. What's what got you back in? When did you start to get that? You were talking about it earlier, that knock from coaching. When did that come back?
Mm. Okay, so it came back. There would be two things I would share around it. So I started to go on a massive money journey, sort of near the, like, not quite, but like before I quit the coaching, I was having to realize, okay, I can't just do money. I've always done money, like this is a new skill set, earning your own money and managing money when your income is not a set amount every month and when it's maybe super unpredictable. So, I had a big
Yeah.
crisis around money. So much fear came up, and I came to this realization, this is a skill set. I want, like I don't know if I'll ever be able to um fully support myself financially, just living my truth and doing what I want. I'd love that. But regardless, I have to figure out money, just regardless.
Mm.
So I started to go on a big money journey. And through that, I created a money management system, like a planning and tracking system for my money, and also how I managed my money in my bank accounts. And I implemented this system and it worked so well for me. So I went from this place of like literally having gone down to zero, having an inconsistent, unpredictable income, and then just getting like my first $1,000 back in savings, $2,000, $3,000, just incrementally, until actually after a year, I saved $30,000, which
Whoa.
was pretty mind blowing to me at the time. Because like I created this system, I also was like, what spiritual things do I have to know about money? What law of attraction or whatever? But, because of the position I was in, I was like, I can't just do fluffy shit. Like it's got to work or it doesn't work,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah.
so all of that was like a consideration in the system that I built. And, um, and I moved to Melbourne, like at some point the next year. And so there was sort of a couple of things that was happening. I was looking for some work, and there's just this part of me that's like, oh, I want to blog again. I just, I can't, like, I want to express myself. I want to
Mm.
share sort of what I'm experiencing and thinking. And, so I started setting up a blog. I made a website again after
Yeah.
deleting my website,
Yeah,
deleting
yeah,
my
yeah,
Facebook. Like I don't have the Facebook I had when I was at school. And
yeah.
and uh and also, so then with the money stuff, people that I was close to started, asking about it and wanting to use the system that I created, and I had my sister using it, and she would then pass that on to her friends, and her friends would come back and tell her and be like, man, that was so helpful. Like, this is
Awesome.
what I've been able to do with it. And so I was starting to have all this feedback. And one of the things I felt so burned by in my past coaching experience was how it turned into a need for me to make money. And so then
Mm.
it felt like I was trying to get something, and I just
Yeah.
didn't want to do that again.
Yes.
And I felt, I, yeah, I started to feel just, I guess, icky and like, is this just coming from my ego? Is this just my
Yeah.
selfishness? So for me, the way that this arose with the money stuff as well, specifically, was like, okay, well, here's a thing that's organically seems to be like this would be really helpful if I offered this
Mm.
to people, because people are getting a lot of value out of it. I don't want to put myself in a position where, oh, okay, then I'm trying to make it support me until it does.
Mm.
And so, yeah, it was really through that. The way that I got started again was um, I set that up as a digital product people could buy. And I put in a Facebook group that I was in, I've created this thing. Is anyone interested? I had a lot of interest from that. So I had, I was like, okay, that made me just do it. I stayed up all night for a couple of
Yeah.
nights, set it all
Yeah.
up, and then
Yeah.
put it up for sale.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that got me going. But I then went into my resistance after that. Like I had this, backswing for almost a year before I did my next significant thing
Whoa.
around it. And so it was sort of
Okay.
like this very painful process to begin with, getting back into it.
So there was that uplift, the resistance came in, and then so I'm curious to hear what you learned from that swing. So you got back in and then resistance, and then obviously you came out of that. What did that teach you? It sounds like a very powerful period.
Yeah, what that taught me is it taught me about inessential activity and how I
Mm,
hid out in good old inessential activity, doing courses, writing a website, doing market research, instead of doing the thing that's terrifying, doing the
yeah,
thing that's so scary. And yeah, and you just got to do it and lean into that. And something that I always found uncomfortable is, and I think a lot of people do actually. I have had a lot of clients that feel really uncomfortable about this, is actually going and talking to people.
mm,
I guess I'm more introverted, have social awkwardnesses,
yeah,
that I can be, if I'm in my sort of default egoic mode, it takes a lot of energy and it's very taxing for me to
yeah,
talk to people, and then just all this shame and whatever that would come up about talking about my offer and what I wanted to share. So that was what I resisted. But like, that's what you got to do if you want to start a business. What I learned is business is about relationships primarily. And if you don't talk to people, if you don't talk to anyone about what you're offering, you can't help anyone. So many
yeah,
people, I wanted this, and I encounter a lot of people that I work with that they just want to put out some Instagram posts. They just want to like post that they're doing
yeah,
something and
yeah,
people will all magically come. And I'm like,
yeah,
no, you have to proactively talk to people and build relationships and
yeah.
connect.
I love that you said that because it's such a big thing. It just everything that you said there, that whole string. It was like, I want it to be easy, and then you get the momentum, and then start doing all the other things. But it's like there's only select things that matter, and it's so true
Yeah.
that those early conversations, they teach you so much.
Yeah, I've had to tell a few clients by now, stop building your website. Like, you don't, it doesn't matter. You need to go and talk to people.
Yeah.
Don't do your branding. Go and talk to people. Stop, doesn't matter.
I just need to know my message. It's like, but how are you going to know?
Yeah, yeah,
It's just you
exactly.
and your study
Yeah.
and the pet. Oh God, it's so funny. That's great, Alex. I feel like we're right at the end here. There's one more thing I want to ask you about. Uh, that initial momentum. So obviously I'm assuming you started talking to people, and you've also got this thing that you brought up with like social awkwardness when you're in your resistance. Um, what would you say to other introverts out there that are like, DMs, no way, I'm not that person, or I don't, I'm not a salesperson, or like, what would you say to someone who comes up against
Mm.
that?
Oh, that is a really good question. Do you know what I would say? And I even have to remind myself of this sometimes, is like, just all you're doing is having a conversation with a human.
Yeah.
And you don't need to be like, it doesn't need to be anything more than that. Imagine you're at a party talking to someone and have a conversation with them as a human, and through, like, just be curious, and
Mm,
you know like, through your natural curiosity and caring, it's obvious. Like, it's obvious if you could support them, and it's obvious, like, there's also some people that don't need your thing, and that's okay too, or they're not interested, or they're just not open to it, and it's like, you don't need to convince those people. It's fine. Just just have conversations and be curious and talk to people. And it's just a conversation would be what I would
Yeah.
say.
I love what you said about curiosity, because obviously this is what I used to teach when I had my agency and when I was doing sales training. It's so much about that, because people know when you're curious, and then people know where you're like, okay, they're just about to finish. Next question's coming, and it's like they know that you've planned the whole thing. Um, but curiosity just snaps you out of it. You can't do that because you don't know what you're going to ask next.
Yeah, totally. And it's genuine and authentic. And I think people get resistance because they think they have to be not, or part of the reason, or one reason maybe people get resistance is they think they have to be not authentic in order to get someone to do something, and the conversation and the curiosity just takes you back to like, be a human, connecting with another human. And you don't have to make anything happen. You don't have to like force anything, just connect, and be open to that connection.
Mm.
And that's where I would start.
I love that. I love that. That's great, Alex. Thanks for joining me today and offering everything you did. I feel like we covered so much, but yeah, the big things I took out is just resistance is coming, and that connection to yourself, and just
Mm.
connection in general. The way you've explained it, it's yeah, there's something to that, connection to your offer, connection to you, bringing your life force into it, connection to where people are at. And there, I mean, action's obvious what to do next, but when you're not and you're up here, yeah, you do
It's
what
like you're going blind, when you're
yeah.
up in your head, it's like being blindfolded, trying to like pin the tail on the donkey or shoot a dart or something. It's like you're blind doing it. But when you're connected, it's obvious and you can feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. So awesome. So for people that are watching this now, if they want to connect with you and your business, where do you want them to go?
Yes. So if you're on social media, I'm pretty much only on Instagram. So come find me on Instagram. My handle is at alexh.co, and send me a message if you want to reach out and share anything or just say hi. And also my website is a great place to find information, which is themodernwoman.academy. And that's also where you can find any up-to-date things about what I'm doing, what I'm offering. And actually, finally, I just remembered I have a podcast, which is another great place to come and hang out with me. So you can search on whatever your podcast app is, Money, Sex, Business, and Awakening. And there's episodes on there focused around the sexuality stuff and money, business, and living your true nature and purpose. So that's where to find me.
Love it. And I'll link all that up. Yeah, that's fantastic.